From inside the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Baseball Show. Paul Mancano and John Meoli live on a Thursday in March. We are 1 week away from opening day for the 2025 season. Technically, the season started for two teams like 4 days ago in Japan, but for the Baltimore Orioles and the vast majority of MLB, it is around the corner. But John, today has to be the greatest day on the sports calendar, right? The first day of real March Madness, not the first four, but the first round of March Madness.
Yeah. I am like, I think spring training and being there for as long as I was and many years as I was kind of like ruined March Madness for me. And this goes back to this might be before you. When you used to have to print out your bracket.
Oh, that I did that.
Yeah.
Mostly in high school. But
yeah. When I was like in college and I would go down to spring training for like the minor league stuff I was doing for a Red Sox website, soxprospects.com, still exists. Wow. Fantastic.
Despite your departure.
Yeah. Hey, probably because of, some would say. I would go down and I would like not have my bracket and I would just get really frustrated because I'm like, oh, I want this upset to happen that's on TV at the bar we're at. But like, I don't know if I have, I don't know if I'm supposed to root for it. Like, am I rooting against myself? So that can be challenging. There's also a school, it's in Northeast Connecticut, University of Connecticut. They win often.
I've heard of that.
Men's and women's. Yeah. Some say the highway signs mostly say it's like the basketball capital of the world. So March Madness is a special time in our life up there.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, there was nothing more joyous than having a printed out bracket. And I don't know if you did this, but when your team won, you picked the right one, you circled it. That joy you just don't get when you have an app.
Yeah.
The old-fashioned joy of circling the team that you correctly picked.
Yeah. And the flip side of that is like when you have to cross out like Duke on like 4 lines.
Yes.
Yeah. And you're like, all right, this is cooked.
The alternate is. That's why I do multiple brackets, because I do one bracket and then I pick somebody like Concede Mercer or something. And then my whole like March Madness, I'm still enjoying it, but it's not as much fun because my champion's out.
Yeah, I went a very long time without doing a bracket. I got back into it 2 years ago, and I just went straight. Like I used Ken Pom rankings, and I went like full analytics nerd. Except I forgot to pick UConn to win it all, so I would have like. So last year I was like, all right, I'm gonna do like the UConn Ken Pom bracket where UConn wins and the Ken Pom team that's ranked higher goes the whole way, which means I just did a chalk bracket last year because UConn was the number one and they ended up winning. Yeah. This year, UConn winning with Ken Pom guys, which is, I think there's like 3 upsets on the whole bracket, which is how you know it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's going to be chalk. But also, I mean, good for you for doing the research because I never do the research.
It took me 5 seconds. It was so great.
All right. Well, we're going to talk baseball, not basketball today, because the Orioles are finalizing their roster. They're getting ready for opening day. We are going to talk about some stats from last year that could change this year, that likely will change for better or for worse, and how that could affect their 2025 season, define their 2025 season. But first, news and notes. We know Zach Eflin is going to start on opening day. When Grayson Rodriguez went down with his injury, this was pretty much a fait accompli. Jorge Mateo is back in games. He's playing in Grapefruit League action. He's got 4 at-bats under his belt already, 0 for 4, but literally 4 at-bats, so we're not judging anything. Good to see that he is on the road to recovery, even though he's not going to make the opening day roster most likely. And then let's talk about Coby Mayo getting optioned. Because, John, you wrote about this on the BaltimoreBanner.com, where you can subscribe. $1 for 6 months. Coby Mayo was optioned to Triple-A Norfolk a few days ago. This is something that we expected. Pretty much everybody who was following the team expected this to happen. But Coby Mayo was frustrated, and he voiced his frustration afterwards when talking to the media. He called it a lose-lose, and I want to read the full quote in order to capture it. He said, quote, "It obviously sucks because you feel like you've proven everything you needed to. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it's quite enough. Obviously, you go back there, and if you have success, it's, oh, well, he's supposed to have success because he's already proven it. And if he doesn't have success, it's, oh, well, obviously he's fallen off. It's kind of a lose-lose going to Norfolk." Now, he did walk back a lot of that. He tweeted out a statement yesterday where he said, his frustration was not with the Orioles or Norfolk. It was more frustration of the situation right now. He said in that statement, quote, "The comments I made yesterday to the media after being optioned were by no means directed to the Orioles organization or the Norfolk Tides. I will be the first to tell you I didn't do enough this spring to break camp with the big league team. I was frustrated in the moment and things were taken out of context. As a competitor, this has lit a fire in me, and I will make sure I work even harder to get back to the big leagues and help the team win games as soon as possible. I will never settle for anything less than the best version of myself." End quote. John, we have talked to Coby Mayo, each of us, a lot over the years. We know that he is a fierce competitor. We know that he, in a lot of instances, wears his emotion on his sleeve. We know that he puts his body on the line for the game in instances where he ends up breaking bones because he's jumping over a railing in Norfolk and ends up ending on the injured list because of it. This is who Coby Mayo is. And it's also the situation that a lot of Orioles prospects have found themselves in recently. It's a frustrating situation. And I think, first and foremost, from a human perspective, it is very much understandable that Coby Mayo was frustrated by this.
Yeah, and I think that was my first thought as I was kind of processing all this, is that this is somebody who got to Norfolk in July of 2023. At that point, Colton Cowser was already up in the big leagues. He ended up spending most of the rest of that season with Norfolk. Jackson Holliday was with Bowie and was in Bowie with him before that. That lineup included Joey Ortiz, Connor Norby, Heston Kjerstad, Kyle Stowers, all guys who are his peers. He's probably the last of that generation, if you want to call them that era of Orioles prospects. He's probably the last of them to break through. But all of those guys have dealt with that frustration for years. He got to experience that firsthand. These people are incredibly close. They're very good friends. They spend a ton of time with each other on and off the field. And that is the experience that Coby Mayo got to see. I'm sure he was mentally prepared for this to happen to him, but it's not fun when it does happen. And I think the flip side, and what I tried to highlight when I wrote about it, and I think Jacob Kalbenmeyer at the Baltimore Sun did a good job doing the same thing, is that yes, there's a lot of downside, but there's more upside than he was realizing. All these players ultimately are going to be regulars in the big leagues this year. Heston Kjerstad, it took a while and he was probably incredibly frustrated, but he is a better player now than he was when he got to the big leagues at the end of 2023. Connor Norby had to fill a role on the Orioles. He had 1,000 Triple-A plate appearances. It was insane.
Yeah.
Same with Kyle Stowers. These guys spent a lot of time there. It's not what you want, but this is the last vestige, I think, of the Orioles kind of really, really pushing guys through the minors. The downside of that was they got to Triple-A quickly, which is basically what you can say for everyone in that 2020, 2019, 2020, 2021 draft class.
Yeah.
And Jackson Holliday. And they got to Triple-A quickly, and then they were kind of stuck there. This is a team, and I think you hear when you talk to Dylan Beavers, Judd Fabians of the world, they know it's not if you're Gunnar Henderson, and this is not something Gunnar Henderson ever said. I'm not putting words in his mouth, but that when you are ready, for the most part, there's going to be the job for you because you are going to be better than whoever is playing the position you're playing at before. I think there's a new generation of Orioles prospects that realizes there's a ton of guys up there who are really good. I have to be that good. It's going to be very hard for me to break through. And I think these guys in the earlier generation know that through experience, but it's not something that you want to be accepting of. And I think that, that's all context that is helpful when you read Coby Mayo's comments, and not harmful when you put that into context or take it out of context, however you want to put it.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, I think he's the last vestige of that era, so to speak, of that first wave of Orioles draft picks in the Mike Elias era, because he was a high school draft pick, and he didn't rock it up the same way that Gunnar Henderson did, because Gunnar Henderson's one of a kind, and Gunnar Henderson was drafted a year before.
Yeah.
But Coby Mayo, has been Triple-A Norfolk since the end of the 2023 season.
It was July. I mean, he has a full season of Triple-A plate appearances, which in a lot of circumstances, if you have a 920 OPS in those plate appearances, you probably are going to be in the big leagues.
Right.
And there's a lot of circumstances, I think, that are in his control and out of his control that have made that happen. And he also, to be fair, he didn't plan this year, this winter, to go and show everyone that he can still hit it in Norfolk. All his work was I need to prove that I could do the big leagues. It's kind of when he came back to Bowie in 23, he had struggled. He knew it, and he came back and was an absolute monster. He was planning on doing that. He was not planning on doing this.
Right. And he has struggled this spring, to be fair. I mean, he, in 42 at-bats, hitting 190, really struggled to start spring, and it turned it on in the final couple weeks. 590 OPS, tiny sample size. That we should not be judging whether he is big league ready based on that small sample size. I think his 926 OPS in Triple-A last year is a much better indicator of where he is. But Brandon Hyde did say yesterday when he was asked about it that we want guys to prove it in production in spring training, as well as to be able to fix the things that they're working on. And production-wise, Coby Mayo did not deliver a whole lot. However, he came into camp with no available roster spot, barring a major injury, to a corner infielder, to a first baseman or a third baseman. You know, we saw Jorge Mateo is slowly recovering from Tommy John. That's not a positional fit. Gunnar Henderson went down with an injury, whether he's ready for opening day or not. That's not a positional fit either. Coby Mayo's either going to play third base or he's going to play first base. And as you wrote about, he's probably going to play more first base than he is third base.
Yeah, I don't understand still why. Like, I don't understand why we're still doing this. I know there's people inside the organization that don't understand why. I know
why we're still trying Coby Mayo at third base.
But like, it's dismissive to say that, and I don't even like saying. I'm mad that I said it, honestly. But like, because it's not that he can't play third base. Like, that's not for me to say. Like, the game will tell you. When I asked somebody when Connor Norby got called up, I was like, because he got called up. Basically, there was like a week-long need at second base, and he was going to play second base. And I asked somebody, I was like, "Is he like? Do you think he's like this? He's going to be able to do this? He's going to be able to like play at the level?" He was like, "He's a big league second baseman. Like right now, there are 30 of those. He is one of those 30. Like he's a big league second baseman. Like what that means in a year, 2 years, whatever. Like he's a big league second baseman right now. So like it's not for me to decide whether he's going to be a third baseman. It just strikes me that they were very decisive with Ryan Mountcastle. And then there were some detours along the way, but there were some detours that were definitely necessary and definitely needed to happen. But they made that move. And I think if you either put all your eggs in making him as good of a third baseman as he can be, or you accelerate the process of making him like a good enough first baseman that you want to put him out there and you feel good putting him out there if something happens to Ryan Mountcastle. And I don't know that doing both serves either of those purposes.
Right. And here's the problem. The Orioles have all-star Jordan Westberg at third base right now. And they have Ramon Arias, who is a former Gold Glove winner, who can also play that position. Gunnar Henderson, who has a lot of experience at that position. And then at first base, they have Ryan Mountcastle and Ryan O'Hearn. O'Hearn is a lefty, so they don't want duplicative right-handed hitting first baseman. And then hot on Coby Mayo's heels is Samuel Basallo, who can also, in theory, play first base. So there was not a spot on this 26-man roster, barring an injury, for Coby Mayo. So two things can be true. He can be frustrated, and it's understandable that he's frustrated. But at least anybody looking at this from an objective standpoint, none of us could really make the case that he deserved a roster spot over anybody who is projected to get a roster spot right now.
Yeah, and it's just challenging. You know, I feel like I was trying to find it, and like you Google like Coby Mayo like option to reassign, and you get all the stories from this year. But I feel like last year he was like very clear-eyed, and he was like, I knew I wasn't. He had a great spring last year.
Awesome spring.
He had an awesome spring. Yeah, he was really impressive. Like he opened a ton of eyes, and not to say that eyes were closed. He was, I think, the organizational player of the year. No, maybe Jackson Holiday exists, but he had a really good year.
Yeah.
And he was like so clear-eyed about it. He was like, I knew what I was here for. I was here to like get comfortable and get to know people and like show what I could do. And like, you know, now I'm going to go and prove it. And like, it just felt very different. And like, it's completely understandable why. It's just not, it's just somebody, you know, I think that perspective of from last year is like more the Coby Mayo that like, that's the truer Coby Mayo than the one that like, and this is like, also, we're talking about it. We've been doing this for, gosh, I don't know how long, like 10 minutes, but like, it's kind of surprising that this is like, I guess if this is the controversy of spring, like shout out to all of us. Like if Cade Povich gets optioned on Sunday, like there will probably be some thoughts from some people. And like, I hope, and I guess I would be one of those people.
Happen, but
I'm not sure that would happen either, but like, this was going to happen. I think last year when I got mad about Jackson Holiday, I wrote like, when this happens to Coby Mayo next year, I'm not going to be mad.
Right.
And I remember somebody texted me and like laughed about it, that he would still be prospect eligible. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is exactly what's going to happen. Like, this is like a year out. We knew this was going to happen.
This is now the third year in a row that we are talking about this. It could have been the fourth if Adley Rutschman had not gotten hurt 4 spring trainings ago, I guess now.
God, can you imagine?
Yeah, that would have been bad. But Grayson Rodriguez 3 years ago. I mean, or 2 years ago now. I don't know math. Jackson Holiday last year. Those were far less understandable, I think, than this one. And Jackson Holiday, to me, was understandably the cause of the most ire because he proved it in spring. He was the number one prospect in baseball. The Orioles then signed Tony Kemp to fill that roster spot. They didn't have a second baseman, left-handed hitting second baseman who could have filled that spot.
Yeah.
It should have been Jackson Holiday's spot. His struggles in the big leagues to start the year notwithstanding. For Coby Mayo, in a similar way, also, his struggles in the big leagues last year should not really be counted in this conversation either. Because I've seen people say, well, he's got to prove it at the big league level. Well, the only way you can prove it at the big league level
you just do it.
is if he gets those big league opportunities. I also do wonder from a personal standpoint if it's a little bit more difficult for Coby Mayo right now because he is the last of that group. And he's 23. It's not like, to me, it's not a lose-lose in the way that he described it, because as you wrote, John, there is still a lot to gain. I mean, when you're playing in Triple-A and you're a top prospect, you're not just auditioning for the Orioles, you're auditioning for 29 other teams. I don't think the Orioles are likely to trade him, but if he continues to hit well, if he stays healthy, he's not going to go down in anyone's estimation. Now, if he's there for 3 more years and he's 26, he's going to go drop in some prospect rankings.
That would be wild.
That would be wild, and let's hope that doesn't happen. But there is certainly downside. There is something for him to lose if he goes down there and struggles. I don't expect that to happen. But from a personal standpoint, too, I remember talking to Connor Norby, I think it was last spring training, and he was talking about how it was a little bit easier to digest the fact that he was stuck in Triple-A because he was there with Kyle Stowers, with Heston Kjerstad, with all these other guys, with Coby Mayo, that were all going through the same thing. And right now, Samuel Basallo is in Triple-A, and he's one of the Orioles' top prospects, but he just got there. He's not going through the same kind of thing. He's 20 years old. He's not going through the same thing that Mayo is. Mayo and Basallo could be the last guys that the Orioles have drafted that are top 10 prospects in baseball for a while, barring Enrique Bradfield Jr. or Vance Honeycutt jumping up the rankings.
Yeah.
It's hard for these guys who are considered widely by evaluators around the league to be some of the best at what they do. And right now they're not getting that opportunity. But Coby Mayo's 23. I think an opportunity will arise. Injuries always happen. I think he will get that opportunity. The problem is, if he's going to be playing first base, Ryan O'Hearn is here for the year. Absolutely. And he hits from the left side. And right-handed hitting Ryan Mountcastle, that you said Coby Mayo is about as perfect a successor to Ryan Mountcastle at first base as you can imagine.
Yeah.
He's here for 2 more years.
Yeah. You need a reason to move off of him. And I don't know that's going to, this stuff works itself out. I feel pretty confident in that. And I also feel really confident in saying that the Orioles really like Coby Mayo. They think he's going to be a really good major league hitter for a long time. And that gets lost in this. I feel I feel like outside, we've mentioned Heston Kjerstad a couple times. There's not a world on 27 other teams where Heston Kjerstad spends as much time in Triple-A or not playing as he did on the Orioles last year. And that's not to say that the Orioles don't think that Heston Kjerstad is just going to mash. It's just they can keep that perspective in a way that I think it's harder to when somebody is not playing, so that Austin Slater can play. I don't know. That's a bad example because Austin Slater was playing mostly when Heston Kjerstad had a concussion. Yeah. You know what I mean?
These things do tend to work themselves out. However, the one move that I would say the Orioles didn't have a set answer for, and they kind of forced something, was the Trevor Rogers trade. To me, that seemed like, at that point, Mike Elias felt like there was never going to be an opportunity for Connor Norby or Kyle Stowers, and let's maximize the value that we can get with both these guys. And that felt like a little bit of a forced trade. I don't expect the Orioles to do that with Connor Norby, or with Coby Mayo, I should say, because I think they view him in a much different tier than those 2 prospects.
Correct. I would agree with that.
I think he is here. I think he's here for the long term.
Yeah, it's just not right now.
It's just not right now. All right, let's talk about some stats that could change for the better or perhaps for the worse in 2025, mostly for the better, that could define the 2025 Orioles. there were some areas last year. The Orioles were a good team. I want to make that clear. They won more than 90 games. They were a playoff team. But there were some areas that they could have improved upon. Some were out of their control. Some were areas of coaching. Some were player-led. We're going to mention some stats here that really stuck out to us that I feel like the Orioles could improve upon. And I'm going to start with one that, John, you and I both wanted to put on this list.
Yeah, this is the only reason I wanted to do this, so I could talk about this.
98 stolen bases. That's the number that the Orioles put up in 2024. That was tied for 18th in Major League Baseball. That number is going to go up. The Orioles have signaled it through what Brandon Hyde has said, through what the players have said, and through the talent that they have on this roster.
Yeah, and you know, I wrote this, I think, at the end of January. It got back to me, like the Orioles had kind of looked at it, and like you look at what the smart teams do, and they consider themselves a smart team, and like they run. This is a long way from like the Moneyball movie and like Billy Bean telling whoever in the weight room, like, don't steal. Like, it's not worth it. I think there is a little more knowledge of like how often you have to be successful for it to be worth it. And the Orioles were not running enough to get the most out of whatever that formula is. I don't, you know, I was told there'd be no math, so I don't know what it is, but I know that there's like a threshold where like, if you run this much, like even if you get thrown out X amount of times, you're still going to like be a net positive.
Yeah.
This is a fast team. This is an athletic team, in a lot of different ways. And I understand the desire to keep runners on base and not take too much risk when there are guys who can leave the yard basically at 1 through 7, 1 through 8, 7.5, depending on like how often you want to say like Cedric Mullins and Jackson Holliday can leave the yard. Like guys can go deep pretty much up 9 lineup. You don't want to end rallies, but they, I think, kind of resolve to run more. And you've seen that with Jackson Holliday's kind of mandate to go out there and just do stuff this spring and figure it out. I think guys like Colton Cowser are going to run a little more. I think Gunnar Henderson is always going to, you know, put the pedal to the floor and run. I'm laughing at like the Ryan Mountcastle sneaky fast like comments that always happen. Like, I don't know, he's going to steal bases, but like, that's kind of what we're talking about. These guys can run. They want to, and I think they will.
Yeah. You also hopefully will have a larger sample size, more games played for Jorge Mateo, who's obviously one of the fastest players in all of baseball. He played just 68 games last year, had 13 steals. Andy Kuska of the Baltimore Banner has written about how Jackson Holliday relearned how to run. I don't know how that's possible, but is getting a whole lot faster, basically. Got a whole lot faster in the offseason. We've already seen it in spring. He's going to get on base more, period. And when he's on base more, he's going to run more. He's one of the most athletic players in baseball. So that's going to be big. Last year, Cedric Mullins led the way with 32 stolen bases. Gunnar Henderson had 21. I think that Mullins, if he's healthy, is going to be right around that number. Gunnar could go up. And then you look at the other additions that they made. Tyler O'Neill is a little bit more of a speed threat than Anthony Santander. He's got like a couple stolen bases last year. Jordan Westberg is going to be healthier, hopefully. Played 107 games last year, had 6 steals. If he plays a full season, could be 10, 15 steals potentially. Ramon Laureano is also sneaky fast. He's going to be on this team. He had 8 last year in just 98 games. By the way, how the heck did Austin Hayes have 0 steals last year?
That's wild.
I know he wasn't a full-time player. I know Colton Cowser stole his spot, but 63 games last year for a guy that was a former 5-tool prospect, quote unquote, and was one of the faster guys in baseball.
Yeah.
He in a lot of ways, I think we saw his, production dip in 2024, and that was an underrated one.
Yeah, and he had physical issues that limited him from running, but he was somebody, when you talk about relearning to run, I feel like it was spring 2017 or 18. I did a relearning to run story on Austin Hayes. So it's a fun one. It's a fun little niche to do every spring training, because I'm sure if you analyze either of our running styles, which is not an idea for a TikTok video, I assure you we will not do that. It is an idea, but one I will not participate in. I'm sure there's a lot of things that can be improved. And like he was getting hurt all the time, and Jackson Holliday just wants to get better. But the answer to that question is I have no idea why I didn't steal any bases last year.
Yeah. I don't think Enrique Bradfield Jr. is going to be on this team this year.
No.
But
no,
probably not. But when he gets here eventually, 2026, 2027, he's going to be stealing a whole lot of bases. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
All right. Another stat that stuck out to me.
Did I just do that? Did I just get water on your phone?
You did. That's okay.
I'm sorry.
going to wipe it off.
It's just
as
water.
long as it's not snot. That's
or spittle.
Or spittle, perhaps. 481 walks issued by the Orioles pitching staff in 2024. That's not terrible. That's, from 18th in baseball, I believe. I think that number is going to go down for a lot of reasons. And for a lot of the reasons that I think the stolen bases are going to go up. I think that you're going to get a concerted effort from a lot of the pitchers on the staff. I know Grayson Rodriguez is not going to be healthy to start the season, but Grayson Rodriguez talked about in spring how one of the biggest things he learned from Corbin Burns was that sometimes it's better to just go at the guy because, making the correct, precise, exact pitch every time, you often end up missing. We've seen Grayson Rodriguez get better at control, get better at controlling the strike zone recently, but Corbin Burns mastered the art of pitching deep into games, pitching deep into seasons, racking up innings because he got less concerned about strikeouts and more concerned about making outs. And I think that Grayson Rodriguez, I think Dean Kramer is going to take a page from that book. The guys that were on the team with Corbin learned a big lesson from him.
Yeah. And I was looking up as you're talking, that's 3 walks per 9. That's not a lot.
Yeah.
That was 13th. I don't know where we are. Yeah. 18th most, but 13th, like on a per 9 basis. Like that's not terrible. I think that that's going to be one of the push pulls of how they develop pitchers and how they bring pitchers along and how they kind of instruct and want guys to pitch at this level. Like Cade Povich has always been kind of an example of how of what you're going to see going forward. And that like, I have nasty stuff and I'm going to throw it in the strike zone because if I do that, you're not going to hit it.
Yeah.
That's kind of where the game is going. It's harder to get guys to chase because you have to start inside the strike zone. I'm looking at this and like the White Sox walked 4 batters per 9, which is a lot more over the course of a full season. And like, you remember those bad Orioles teams who couldn't get guys to chase because they couldn't throw strikes.
Right.
And like, then they would walk guys and then they'd have to come in the strike zone and then they would,
give up.
it would go badly.
400-foot homer.
I think all the things you said about the guys who are going to take more advantage of the counts that they get into and just put guys away versus strike them out. I think that's going to be helpful. I think that there's going to be more. I think the starting rotation is just going to be more solid with some of the additions, and I think that there's going to be. I'm interested to see if there's any kind of like improved, not pitch calling, but just like approach to getting guys out like as a team versus individual pitchers. And I think there might be some tweaks in that result in like shorter plate appearances overall, and that means fewer walks.
Yeah, you're also getting a full season from Zach Eflin, who hasn't been below the 9th percentile in MLB in walk percentage in a full season since 2020.
Yeah,
so he is excellent at controlling the strike zone. Tomoyuki Sugano walked an absurdly low 1.7 batters per 9 innings last year with the Yomiuri Giants. Obviously, there's going to be an adjustment period, but he is very good at this point. He has to be at controlling the strike zone. And you're also getting rid of Craig Kimbrell, who, given his low innings total because he was a closer and then not on the team for the final week of the season, walked an absurd 31 batters in 51 1/3 innings. I know some of that. At some point, he was like, I'm doing this on purpose. I get a runner on second. I'm walking the runner ahead of him. He walked way too many batters. You're getting rid of him. The one concerning thing is Charlie Morton, you would think, given his advanced age, would be more of a control the strike zone guy. He hasn't really been that. He has been over the MLB average in terms of walk percentage the last couple of years. However, I think Eflin, I think Sugano, I think this team is going to get better at controlling the strike zone. Yeah.
If I was like working in like media monitoring, we would be on some kind of list if I worked for like Craig Kimbrell or Tony Kemp. Like, I don't think we go very long without mentioning either of those two players on this. And it's okay. It's okay. I know Craig Kimbrell.
It's nothing personal.
He didn't hurt you, but he has hurt your existence.
He's made my job harder. He's made life harder for a lot of Orioles fans.
Yeah,
it's nothing personal.
Yeah, there's a lot of baggage there.
Yeah. All right, another stat here. 13 Orioles pitchers made starts in 2024. It's got to go down, right?
You would think so. I mean, I think when we talk about all the things that happened with the Orioles team last year, like they could not pitch in July.
Nope.
Like that was like all these trades happened because they were like falling apart on the mound. It was,
and then they got to August and they're like, all right, we're set. And
Yeah.
then Corbin Burns fell apart.
yeah,
in the
I think
month of
Corbin
August.
Burns fell apart, but like they had steadied the ship in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's really challenging because you think about like there's going to be 5 guys in the rotation at the beginning of the season, like Cade Povich and Albert Suarez. If you want to make them 5-6, you can just say there's going to be 6 guys that make starts in the first 6 weeks, we'll say, because that's just how this works. And then you have Kyle Bradish and Tyler Wells coming back. That's 8. Those guys are going to make starts. It's going to be exciting when that happens for both of them. I don't think 5 people other than that. But I would say that everyone on the 40-man roster would make a start. So you're probably going to see a Trevor Rogers cameo at some point.
You might.
Because you kind of have to.
If he's healthy.
Probably a Chase McDermott will line up, and like we'll see what that looks like. Brandon Young probably gets a shot at some point. And beyond that, I'm not really sure who it is unless we're talking about like somebody bringing in at the deadline, which I think they don't want to have to do again if they can help it. But they probably will have to.
Last year they got 1 opener performance from Matt Bowman, so that bumped that total up. They got 4 starts from Trevor Rogers and a combined 15 starts from 3 guys who ultimately needed Tommy John. That was an increase of 4 pitchers, by the way, from 2023, where only 9 pitchers made starts in 2023. But if you do see a high total in terms of pitchers making starts this year for the Orioles, it's likely going to be a good thing, like you said, because you're getting guys back, because you were replacing guys in your current rotation with Kyle Bradish, maybe Tyler Wells. So,
and I don't think we had mentioned Grayson Rodriguez in this. He would not be in one of the opening day group, and also not somebody who I talked about as I was rattling off others. Like, I'd be fascinated to know how many pitchers the Dodgers used last year, like starters wise, probably a ton. Yeah. And like, as long as they're good, it's okay. Like, if this team, if we're talking about, we kind of ended up at like 8 or 9, and then add Grayson Rodriguez at 10, it's going to be more than that, just because.
Yeah, they're going to trade for somebody at the deadline that we don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, and as long as you're not doing like openers and guys who like shouldn't be like, I think you're okay. If you're if you have like 11, 12 starting pitchers who you feel okay about starting, like that's not the worst thing that can happen in the world.
This isn't the 2021 Orioles. My former co-host over at Masson and current roommate Brendan Mortensen and I went back and forth and tried to name every Orioles pitcher that made a start in 2021. Likes of Zach Lowther and Alexander Wells, and it was a long list. And then there are guys that like you totally forget about, like Denji Reyes.
Yeah, was Asher Wojciechowski still in the mix then, or was he gone?
So.
I think he might have been gone by then.
Chris Ellis was there.
Chris Ellis, I remember that guy.
There are some real names.
He made like 6 starts and was like pretty good, and then got hurt, and then just got rid of him. Like
he was great. He was like, he had a great final stretch in 2020, I think, or no, in 2021 was it?
I feel like he was a 21 guy.
Yeah, he was 21.
It's just hard to remember. That all blends together in like in a way that it deserves to.
All right, another stat here. Now this is going to be a very quick one, but 2,281,129. That number is the total number of fans who came through the gates at Oriole Park at Camden Yards in 2024. 19th highest attendance in Major League Baseball. That averages out to 28,162 per game. The Orioles aren't adding any seats in left field when they are bumping that left field wall back in. However, I think that number is going to go up. The Orioles have seen their attendance grow every year. I mean, technically every year since 2020, because no fans were in the stands.
Yeah, that was a big zero.
I mean, that number last year was a bump by 4,000 fans per game, and that's coming off a season where they had bumped by 8,000 fans per game. I think that attendance is going to continue to go up. And if the Orioles don't have that second half slump last year, I think that attendance number would have been higher. Yeah, and this is a good team that a lot of people like. I think they're doing, I haven't counted how many giveaways and like promotional stuff they're doing. It feels like there's more. I mean, there's 2 Hawaiian shirt nights, so like that's twice as many. That's 2 sellouts. That's a banged on sellout, like nailed on, happening, sold out, like probably quickly. I've said this, I don't think I've said it on here, but like
I think it was the Phillies series last year. Like my brother and his girlfriend, now fiance, were coming down from New York, and he was like, "Let's go to a game like while we're here." And I was like, "It's sold out!" Like,
Yeah,
and he was
good
stunned.
luck.
He was stunned. He was like, "What?" Like this has been like years of just being able to go to like an Orioles game on a whim, and like
Right.
I think there's going to be more games. Like I think people are going to make events of it. You know, like I struggle to talk about attendance because like I do pay to go to games with my daughter. Like I make sure that I buy myself a ticket because I feel like that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I buy her a ticket.
Supporting the economy.
Yeah. And yeah. I just feel like, it's like the right thing to do, but like it's expensive. And I also realized that like I've gone to a ton of games and I don't pay for them because I'm working, and I find it very challenging to talk about attendance because like it costs a lot of money and people can do whatever they want. And like, they don't want to hear it from, they don't want to hear it from me.
Yeah.
So I just don't want to have them. I don't want to be the person to talk about it when I know they don't want to hear from me.
Right. And I'm never going to go on there and on here and say, you need to buy tickets. Like everybody needs to fill up the yard because like you said, it's expensive.
Yeah.
Parking is expensive. It's hard. The Orioles are making efforts. Katie Griggs is making efforts to make everything cheaper at the game, but it's completely understandable that people have, economic thresholds that they don't want to pay for.
Yeah.
However, I think in a macro sense, I think it's good that more people will be filling the stands. I expect them to. It's good for downtown. It's great.
Yeah, I remember this is like talking about attendance in a weird way, but like I remember in 2016 when they started out like 6-0, it was like freezing cold the first week of the season, and like there was like a whole MLB Network segment on like after the game about like where are all these people in Baltimore? They're undefeated, and it was like 40 degrees every single day, and like there was nobody there because it was cold and it was April, and like it's just one of those things. It's like I've had to do stories at other places that I worked in my life about like attendance. I had to do one about how the attendance was low the week after they dropped like they went from having 0 people to like 25% capacity, and they were like, there's only like 3,000 people at these games. Like, we need a story. This is terrible. And I was like, I like laughed, and they're like, no, I'm serious. So we have to do the story. It's like, but like, it's like for whom is that? Like talking for whom is that? I don't know. People want to go see the Orioles, and they will, and it'll be fun as long as they're good.
There are so many reasons people don't go to games or do go to games. I mean, a lot of it is just like you obviously always see as soon as school gets out, you see a huge rise in attendance. As soon as school is back in session, you see a huge dip in attendance.
Yeah.
But like people like my dad is a lifelong baseball fan. He's never been to an opening day because it's too damn cold, is his explanation. So
it's cold.
If people don't like, some people love baseball. They don't want to be sitting out in the cold. That's understandable.
Yeah.
All right. Other stats that we have here. Why don't you tell us about Colton Cowser in high leverage situations, John? Because his stats last year in clutch situations were not good.
Yeah. Weighted runs created plus is a good rate stat. 100 is league average. And in high leverage situations, his WRC plus was 12. Yeah, that was second lowest in baseball. I think Michael Garcia on the Royals was like deeply negative. So like there is, you could do worse. That just doesn't seem like the type of thing that's going to keep happening. And we're talking about all these avenues for the Orioles to score more runs, and like they were still one of the top 5 offenses of baseball last year. So I'm not like, I don't think they're pressed to do that. I think they're going to probably score the most runs in baseball. Like I'm not going to put that in writing.
Yeah.
I might. I think they're going to be like the best offense in baseball this year.
Wow.
And I think Colton Cowser is going to be up in a lot of big spots. He's going to bat in the middle of the order, top of the order, and he's going to be up in a lot of big spots. And like, those are the types of things that feed on themselves. I think you saw as the season went on that like those moments where the Orioles would need a big swing would come up, and he found himself in the batter's box for a lot of them. And like those build on themselves in a way that like can probably be really challenging for a player, especially a young player, somebody who's still in their first full season. I don't anticipate that happening again. I don't, I'm not saying, because he was this clutch hitter in the minors. He's just a good hitter. I think as he kind of processes what happened last year, all it's going to take, and goes for a lot of the guys on the team, all it's going to take is one 2-run double, in the 7th inning of a game. And you're like, let's go. And then the next time you're up, be like, remember I thought I had a 2-run double? Like, I'm going to do that again. And it just feeds on itself. And I think that's something that will make this team like materially better if he's able to do something like that. And their stats, there are tons of those types of like year to year stats that typically normalize that I think have the opportunity to come back to the good.
Yes.
And there's not a ton that I think will regress in the bad way, except for the other thing we had mentioned here, which is this double play thing, which is awesome.
That's great tease. In terms of Colton Cowser, though.
Oh, sorry. Oh, shoot.
You're getting ahead of ourselves.
I'm not the host here. I can't do this.
No, but it's a great tease because then we have a great final stat that somebody else found. I think philosophically there are two polar opposites of the way that people view clutch stats.
Yeah.
One is the stat head. Clutch stats are ridiculous. There is no such thing as clutch. It's just our personal bias and anecdotal evidence. The other side is the total throw away the stats. The baseball head knows that some guys are clutch and some guys aren't. It's a spectrum in between. Yeah. I fall somewhere in that spectrum. I'm sure you do too. I think that there is such a real thing as a clutch player. However, ultimately, if you are a good player, you're going to get opportunities in clutch moments and you're going to deliver. That's just how it is. And you rarely see huge dichotomies between a player who puts up incredible numbers for a season and is awful in clutch situations.
Yeah.
I think Colton Cowser is going to be a productive hitter. I think he's going to get those opportunities, and I think he's going to do a whole lot better with them this year than he did last year. And a lot of that is due to the fact that he has to adjust. He did adjust. He made huge adjustments last year, and we saw it bear itself out. I expect him to make huge more adjustments this year. Honestly, the lasting image for a lot of people from last year is him coming up in a clutch situation against the Royals, breaking his hand, striking out.
Yeah.
That is a play that stuck with him for obvious reasons, physically and emotionally. He's going to make those adjustments in high leverage situations. I have no doubt that he is going to be a better clutch hitter.
Yeah, and this like his performance, what we're talking about here, like that's both. This is both. Like that's the stat that's like that's a whoa. And like I feel like if you watch the Orioles play consistently, like he always came up in those spots. Yeah. Like they'd always found him, and like that's what happens. That's what the game does. Like if you're dealing with something or struggling in something, like it's gonna find you, and like it's gonna you're gonna have to meet it head on. And sometimes it takes the season just being over and like not having that be the thing that's happening anymore to change it. Like, I don't want to say it's going to be opening day, but like, there's going to be a moment early in the season where like, there's going to be a close game and Colton Cowser is going to come up and he's going to like break the game open or swing it for the Orioles in a positive way. And like, you can say that he's a better player or a different player, or you can say that like, it's just like it's just a different season. And like, these are the types of things like Michael Elias said at the end of the season himself, like, you can do as much as you can to control like situational type stuff. But there's a lot that is just going to happen differently from year to year. That is just pretty random.
All right. Finally, you teased it. It was written about in Slate that the Orioles, I don't think, was this on your radar at all?
No.
The Orioles hit into the fewest number of double plays by any team ever.
Yeah. 71.
That's wild.
It's really like
the moment that sticks out to me is at some point, like 2/3 of the way through the season, Gunnar Henderson hit into his first double play. And I know he batted lead off a lot, so you're not going to get a whole lot of opportunities like that. It speaks to the line drive approach, I think, from the speed of this Orioles team. They can beat out a lot of close plays at first. Why do you think the Orioles hit into so few double plays, and why do you think that'll kind of regress back to us?
I mean, I don't know if they'll break any more records, but like it's exactly what we said. Like, there's all these offensive stats that if you want to use them, can like say that they were a good team or not a good team or did well in this. But like, if they're trying to hit the ball hard in the air, like they're doing it. Like, it's fast.
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse. Like, I don't know their overall team ground ball rate to say that like they just didn't, they just hit them where they weren't, or they didn't hit ground balls when there were guys on first. But like, this kind of goes back to where we started. Like, this is a team with a lot of fast players. Like, outside of the catchers, there are not that many people who are not good runners. They, even the slower players on the team, like you're talking about, like Austin Hayes hit the ball in the air a ton. He didn't really run as well last year. Anthony Santander basically only hit the ball in the air.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really a double play candidate. And you go through down the line and it's clearly unintended. Like, nobody's ever trying to hit into a double play. So it's clearly like unintentional that this happened. And I think it's one of those things when you look at it, you're like, wow, like that makes sense. The same way the Colton Cowser stuff makes sense. Like the same way that like this team didn't run that much, like makes sense when you verify it out. Like it kind of makes sense when you hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think they're going to break any records in that category as well. The Orioles have found themselves in some weird pockets of baseball history recently. The streak of not getting swept was certainly one that drew a lot of attention and finally was put to bed. And I'm glad it was, because obviously they got swept in the most important series of their 2023 season.
Yes.
But the Orioles have found themselves in some weird places in history. And you never know. I mean, the Orioles could have another weird record. The Orioles, if Samuel Basallo becomes like the #1 prospect in baseball by midseason, he would take a big jump. But you know, that's like another record. The Orioles would have an insane number of #1 overall prospects.
Yeah.
Weird records could be broken.
I'm trying to think of other ones. I'm sure like the bad era teams had some good records.
Yeah.
The one that sticks out to me is there was like in 2016, there was a not the bad era, that was a playoff team. There was a 3-game series in Houston and they struck out like 50 something times. It was like the record. And they had just got like t-shirts made that had like a bunch of dudes carrying a big tree trunk. That was like, you know, as like symbolic, like everybody's pulling, you know, everyone's in, like I said, like POFOs, like productive outs for Orioles, which is like a buckism, like don't strike out, basically just do something other than strike out. And like they're all wearing around the clubhouse and like they're striking out like 18 times a game and like
great stuff.
They were really happy when I pointed that out to them. They were like really asking about like t-shirts.
Is this the first, or the Orioles the first team to move their left field wall twice in a span of 3 years?
Yeah. I'm just gonna say yes. This is unverified, but hard.
Probably. All right. Well, we have a week until opening day, and then we have 162 games to follow, and we will have complete coverage on the BaltimoreBanner.com. At John Meoli is his handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. Please like, rate, review, subscribe. If you write us a 5-star review, I will read it out here on the show. John, we got a 5-star rating, but it didn't come with a review recently.
Thank you. Yeah.
But please let us know your thoughts.
Yeah.
I'll give you a shout out. Give us all those good positive ways to engage in podcasts. You can listen to it anywhere that you get your podcast. Watch on X and on YouTube every week. We will have another episode before opening day. Preview this season. Maybe throw out some predictions as well.
Yeah, I'll be around. Cool sweatshirt.
Thank you. It's a Baltimore Banner sweatshirt for those who are not watching. John doesn't have one.
I'd love one.
Everybody here at the Banner got a free one. John was not here that day.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for mine.
It's quite nice. It's warm. It's perfect for a nice early spring day such as today.
We'll see what's happening out there. Maybe we'll get one.
Everybody go watch some basketball. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll catch you.